Hi, Hillside. Daryl Siplinga, the council president, here with Ron Cool, our senior pastor, or one of our pastors, to give you the December council update.
Yeah, thanks, Daryl. Part of what we did is, of course, we receive a variety of reports, and then we actually spent some time at the last council meeting of the calendar year just thinking of some of the really great things that have been happening, that happened during the year, that have been happening during the fall, and so on. And so some of the things we celebrated was the blessing tree, again, with over 400 gifts being purchased and delivered to people in need and help to bring a bit of Christmas joy and love during this holiday season. We talked about the Christmas program and how that was so effective and for many of us very moving. And so love to hear any feedback those of you who were there had, and just but we really appreciated everybody was able to come together and work hard together. And then we also talked some about, we mentioned Mornay being a commissioned pastor. We've talked about that. Still looking forward to naming the date for when we will actually install him, but we are working on that one. And then also, the Wednesday night discipleship classes. We just talked about that. There's been a great turnout. We've kind of maintained steady between 30 and 40 people. And so you're welcome to join us. You could come. Each one stands alone. So love to have you join us on those Wednesday nights. We'll be kicking those off again in January.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Ron. I mean, I mentioned at that time of celebration as well, we had the chance to, I mentioned what a wonderful Advent series that we had. So I didn't expect Ron to mention that as part of his review, but I mean it's fun for me to hear each year how the Advent message comes alive in a different way, and we're blessed to have the pastoral leadership that we have in that too. So we celebrated that. I knew you wouldn't mention it, so I thought I would too. This month we also received and spent the bulk of our time at council receiving and considering the report from the scenario planning team. You'll remember in the congregational updates that we did in October, both online and in person, that we were forming that group, which were representatives of council and of the long-range planning team. And so that group met 4 times during November and December. So invested a lot of time in doing a series of examining what ifs. What we came to realize is that, with some of the Synod decisions, we needed to make some decisions about what does that mean for our future and how does that shape how we respond to those and how we're going to carry on in the future, and called us to take a close look at that. And you'll recall, if you were a part of those, that we were considering 4 options: 2 staying in the denomination and 2 potentially leaving the denomination. As uncomfortable as some of those options made people feel, we thought it was important to do a good job of really studying all of those options in light of really some key factors. We want to be true to our mission and vision. That is, how does any response to the denominational decisions impact our mission and vision, which we think is one of the most important. We want to also think about how our actions impact the potential pool of office bearers in the future. Also, these decisions may impact current and future members and attendance at Hillside. The impact on staff recruitment and retention, we wanted to keep that in mind, and also the impact on the budget and finances. And we considered all of those. Each of us had to set aside our maybe preconceived notion about, we know what the decision ought to be, and we were asked to set those aside and study those and do an analysis. And we had wonderful conversation and dialogue in those meetings to make those determinations. And after the kind of the semi-scientific evaluation, we also said, all right, what would be a pathway for each option? If we chose this option, what's a pathway and what would the implementation plan look like? And then after that evaluation, we also said, okay, we ought to look at each of these options in our decision with a mind to what if Synod changes their decision one way or another in future years? Are we ready for that, and how might we be ready for that, and how does that impact what decision we might make? And then we also looked at practical things like the challenges of implementation and the future and the flexibility of each option, and making sure that we had flexibility. And how do we make sure Hillside can be Hillside in what we do? Because that was important as well. So we provided a complete report and details of that, and made a unanimous recommendation to council, and then the council then discussed and adopted that. So Ron, maybe you can
Yeah, we
outline
discussed it, and again, really good stuff. I'm always thankful, having heard horror stories from other pastors, that we can have a discussion like that and have some good disagreement and questions, but all done in good faith and in trusting each other. And so I want to get this right, so I'm going to read this part for you of the decision that we made. It's, we will remain within the Christian Reformed Church in North America, while allowing some flexibility for the council to evaluate future office bearers who may wrestle with confessional matters. And so a couple of things. First thing, let me just make this clear. Basically, ministry continues the way it has at Hillside. We will be the church we've been. It doesn't, it won't have on day-to-day things much of an impact. We're going to just continue to do what we do, be what we've been. All right. And so it really allows us to do that, and we're thankful for that. We're a place where we want to, we believe deeply what we hold to, but we also are gracious with each other, and recognize that there are going to be some things we're always going to disagree on, but we can grow each other and challenge each other. Again, it was important, I think, for us, because it felt like this is a good way for us to continue to pursue our mission of following Jesus, of loving others and creating community, building a body. And so that was very important to us. And it, I think, really honors Synod. Having been there last summer, I think it honors Synod and the decisions that were made there of recognizing that local churches are going to have some options of how they, understand some terms and to work together. To say, hey, if somebody says, I'm not sure about this, what do you think? Should I serve? Should I not? That's basically kind of what the Synod, said. If there are matters that a person has a question on, talk about it with your counsel. So it allows us to do that. It gives us flexibility for the future. Again, we can just continue to move forward and be faithful to what God is calling us to do. And there's real values we talked about of being part of a denomination, accountability. None of us plan on going rogue, but you never know, right? Sometimes people end up going places where and how does that all work? And so, but to have accountability from other churches and a whole denomination and so on. And again, it just feels like a way of continuing to be who we are, to treat people with grace and love, and to care for people who are in various places in their lives. I mean, to love people who are homosexual, even if we say we don't believe that you ought to practice that, we want to love you and have a place for you and honor and care and help you walk with Jesus. So it felt like this was the best way for us to go forward with those things.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. And I appreciated both the spirit of the conversation in the small group, but also in the council as we wrestled with that. And we recognize we have some work to do in communicating our decision. This is the start of that in terms of communicating with the congregation after the first of the year, when the dust settles on holiday celebrations and all. We'll seek to do a little bit more detailed conversation, perhaps gather people together and say, well, what does that really mean? What does that mean for me? You might be asking in terms of your availability and willingness to serve on the council, and we'll need to do a better job of perhaps communicating that more clearly as we move forward. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, certainly contact myself or any member of council or Ron, and because we're open to conversation about that as well if you have questions about it now. I want to start by thanking thanking members of the Planning Task Force. So Rich Avila, Lucas Bates, Ron Kuhl, Andy Posma, Allison Reefer, Greg Schruer, Katie Spikeman, Ken Tamling, Eric Van Hofwagen, and I also served. So that was an important process. We hope that we can now move on in ministry and service together and do that in the best way possible. So finally, at council meeting, we also received the financial report for the first 6 months of our budget year, so through November. It's not of great concern, but we're a little bit behind where we would like to be as of the end of November. You're getting this message near the end of December, and we always rely on December to be a pretty significant month. We reminded you last month of that for contributions, but we're about 3% under where we'd like to be in terms of contributions relative to expenses. So the calendar year is about over by the time you see this, but we hope to be able to catch up in December and January with that. We'll keep you informed in terms of staying on track. We're not overly concerned, but we want your attention to that with us as well. But then once again, kind of in closing, I want to thank you for your continued involvement, engagement, support, attendance, all those things that we celebrated. We're thankful for the congregation and thankful for our work together. So continue to keep us all in prayer as we move forward.
And again, just hope you had a blessed Christmas and God's blessings in the new year as well as you move forward into that. So have a blessed new year.